On a bustling morning at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, Dr. Amara Johnson, a 42-year-old black woman and respected cardiologist, boarded Flight 214 to New York for a medical conference. As the plane taxied toward the runway, a flight attendant, Emily, accidentally spilled a tray of orange juice on Amara's white blouse. The apology was brief, almost dismissive, but Amara, composed, requested a towel. When none came, and the attendant's attitude grew curt, Amara calmly asserted her rights as a passenger. What no one expected was her next move, a single phone call that halted the plane on the tarmac, freezing the crew in their tracks, and exposing a deeper issue that would spark a nationwide conversation about respect, accountability, and justice. Amara sat in her window seat, 12A, her laptop open to review her presentation notes. She had spent weeks preparing for the conference, where she was set to speak on advancements in heart disease treatment for underserved communities. The spill happened quickly. Emily, rushing to serve first-class passengers, tripped slightly, and the juice splashed across Amara's blouse and skirt. Amara looked up, startled but calm, and asked for a towel to clean herself. Emily muttered a quick sorry and handed her a single napkin before moving on. Amara, surprised by the lack of concern, called after her, politely but firmly, "Excuse me, I need a proper towel, please. This is a mess." Emily glanced back, her expression tight, and said, "I'll get to it when I can." Passengers nearby noticed the exchange. Some whispered, others stared. Amara, aware of the attention, kept her voice level. She repeated her request, emphasizing that the juice had soaked through to her skin and she needed assistance to avoid discomfort during the flight. Emily returned, tossing a small stack of napkins onto Amara's tray table without a word. The gesture felt dismissive, and Amara's patience began to thin. She stood, holding the soaked napkins, and addressed Emily directly. "This isn't acceptable. I'm asking for proper assistance, and I expect to be treated with respect." Emily's face flushed, and she snapped, "Ma'am, you need to sit down. We're about to take off." The tension in the cabin grew. A passenger across the aisle, a middle-aged man, leaned forward and said, "She's right, you know. You spilled the drink. Help her out." Emily shot him a look but didn't respond. Amara, now standing, pulled out her phone and began recording the interaction, stating clearly, "I'm documenting this because I'm not being treated appropriately." Emily froze, her eyes darting to phone. The other flight attendants exchanged glances, unsure how to proceed. The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing a slight delay due to a passenger issue. Amara, still composed, dialed a number from her contacts, a legal advisor at the airline's corporate office, someone she had met years earlier at a diversity in medicine conference. She spoke calmly but firmly, identifying herself as Dr. Amara Johnson and explaining the situation, the spill, the inadequate response, and the flight attendant's dismissive attitude. She cited the airline's customer service policy, which she had reviewed during a previous trip, emphasizing that passengers were entitled to respectful treatment and assistance in such incidents. She requested that the plane return to the gate until the matter was addressed, as she was now uncomfortable continuing flight without resolution. The cabin went silent. Passengers exchanged looks, some nodding in support, others visibly annoyed at the delay. Emily's face paled, and she retreated to the galley, whispering urgently to her supervisor, Karen, a senior flight attendant. Karen approached Amara, her tone conciliatory. "Ma'am, we're sorry about the spill. Let's get you cleaned up." Amara, still holding her phone, replied, "I appreciate that, but this isn't just about the spill anymore. It's about how I've been treated. I've made a formal request, and I'm waiting for a response." Karen hesitated, then stepped away to radio the captain. Minutes later, the plane began moving back toward the gate. Passengers groaned, but Amara remained unfazed, her focus on her phone call. The legal advisor, a woman named Susan, assured Amara that her complaint was being escalated. Susan contacted the airline's ground operations team, instructing them to meet the plane at the gate. The captain announced that the flight would be briefly delayed to address a service concern. Emily, now visibly shaken, avoided eye contact with Amara, who sat back down, her blouse still damp but her resolve unshaken. At the gate, 2 airline representatives boarded, a customer service manager, David, and a compliance officer, Priya. They approached Amara, who explained the incident in detail, showing them the video she had recorded. The footage captured Emily's curt responses and the inadequate napkins, as well as Amara's calm but firm requests. David apologized profusely, offering a voucher and a seat upgrade. Amara declined, stating, "This isn't about compensation. It's about accountability. Your employee's behavior was unprofessional, and I want assurance it won't happen again." Priya nodded, taking notes, and promised a full investigation. She asked Amara if she felt comfortable continuing the flight. After a moment's thought, Amara agreed, provided Emily was reassigned to another section of the plane. The crew complied, and Emily was moved to the rear of the aircraft. Karen personally brought Amara a clean towel and a spare airline blanket to cover her stained clothes. The plane took off 45 minutes late, but Amara felt a small sense of victory. She had stood her ground, not just for herself but for others who might face a similar treatment. As the flight continued, several passengers approached her, quietly expressing support. A young black woman in her 20s said, "I saw what you did. Thank you for speaking up." Amara smiled, her heart heavy but hopeful. By the time the plane landed in New York, Amara's video had been uploaded to social media by a fellow passenger who had recorded the incident from a different angle. The clip went viral, amassing thousands of views within hours. Comments poured in, many praising Amara's composure and criticizing the airline's handling of the situation. Others shared their own stories of mistreatment on flights, being ignored, dismissed, or singled out for their race or appearance. The hashtag Justice on Flight 214 trended, drawing attention from civil rights groups and media outlets. Amara arrived at her hotel, unaware of the growing online storm. She focused on preparing for a conference presentation, determined not to let the incident derail her purpose. But her phone buzzed with messages from friends and colleagues who had seen the video. One was from her sister, Nia, who urged her to speak out publicly. "You can't let this slide. Amara, people need to hear your story." Amara hesitated. She was a private person, more comfortable in an operating room than in the spotlight. But she also knew silence wouldn't change anything. The next morning, a local news station reached out, asking for an interview. Amara agreed, seeing it as a chance to address the broader issue. On air, she spoke candidly about the incident, emphasizing that it wasn't just about a spilled drink but about the lack of respect and accountability. "I'm a doctor, a professional, and I was treated like I didn't matter," she said. "If this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone." She called for airlines to train their staff on implicit bias and to enforce clear protocols for handling passenger complaints. The interview resonated, sparking a wave of support and further media coverage. The airline issued a public statement, apologizing for the unfortunate incident and promising a thorough review of their training procedures. They confirmed that Emily was under investigation and had been temporarily suspended, but the response fell hollow to many, especially as more passengers came forward with similar stories. A black man recounted being questioned about his carry-on bag's contents, while a Latina woman described being ignored when she asked for help on a medical issue. The stories painted a troubling picture of systemic issues within the airline industry. Amara's legal advisor, Susan, connected her with a civil rights attorney named Malik Washington, who specialized in discrimination cases. Malik reviewed the video and Amara's account, concluding that the airline's response violated their own customer service policies and possibly federal anti-discrimination laws. He proposed filing a lawsuit, not just for damages, but to push for industry-wide changes. Amara agreed, but only after ensuring the case would focus on policy reform, not personal gain. "This isn't about me getting a payout," she told Malik. "It's about making sure no one else feels humiliated like I did." The lawsuit was filed within weeks, naming the airline and seeking mandatory bias training, revised customer service protocols, and a public commitment to accountability. Malik's team gathered evidence, including statements from other passengers on Flight 214 and data showing disproportionate complaints from people of color against the airline. A study cited in the case revealed that black passengers were 3 times more likely to be flagged for disruptive behavior than white passengers, even for minor issues like requesting assistance. As the case gained traction, Amara became a reluctant advocate. She spoke at community forums, sharing her experience and encouraging others to demand respect. She partnered with a nonprofit focused on travel rights, helping develop resources to educate passengers about their protections. At one event, she met a flight attendant named Carla, who admitted that training in her airline often overlooked issues of bias. We're taught to de-escalate, but no one talks about how our assumptions affect our actions, Carla said. Amara nodded, seeing an opportunity to bridge the gap between passengers and crew. The airline, under pressure, reached out to Amara for a settlement. They offered a substantial sum and a formal apology, but Amara held firm, insisting on systemic changes. After months of negotiations, they agreed to implement mandatory bias training for all staff, establish a passenger advocate role at major airports, and publish an annual report on customer complaints by demographic. The settlement wasn't perfect. Amara knew change would take time, but it was a start. Back in Chicago, Amara returned to her practice, her focus still on saving lives. She kept a stained blouse from that day, a reminder of why she fought. At the conference, her presentation on heart disease disparities received a standing ovation, not just for its content but for her courage. Colleagues approached her, sharing how her story had inspired them to speak up in their own workplaces. A young medical student, inspired by Amara's advocacy, told her, "You showed me what it means to stand up, even when it's hard." Years later, Amara sat in her office, reading an email from the nonprofit she had partnered with. They had successfully lobbied for new federal guidelines on airline passenger rights, citing her case as a catalyst. She smiled, thinking of that moment on the tarmac, when a spilled drink became a stand for justice. Her call had grounded a plane, but her voice had lifted a movement. The fight wasn't over, but Amara knew she had made a difference, one that would outlast the stain on her blouse and echo in the lives of those who, like her, demanded to be seen and heard.